Specifically from Tower Records.
Tower Records, there was an HMV on the Upper West Side.
86th Street.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I remember meeting people from
Yeah,
LaGuardia.
Upper East Side, but yeah.
No. There was one on the
Oh,
there was one on the
other
west.
one,
There was
okay.
one on 72nd. There was one on 72nd Broadway, and I would meet people from LaGuardia. I stole thousands of dollars worth of cassette tapes, mostly.
It was such a big thing that there was that film Hurricane Streets where they actually dramatized the kids stealing from Tower Records. And I guess Tower was cool with that because it is Tower Records in the film.
I could never get too much into shoplifting as a kid. I could never really do it because, like, I had been guilted so hard in church.
Oh yeah, I could see.
Yeah, I was raised so Christian. I no longer identify as any sort of religion or anything. I'm very apathetic.
I was such a budding socialist that I didn't believe you could harm a large corporation.
Oh no, I'd probably be a better shoplifter now because now I realize shoplifting from Target is a victimless crime.
I did it because I thought it made me cool, and I hoped that it would make people want to have sex with me.
I was with people like my friends when they shoplifted, and I was always like, what the fuck? One time my friend Kristen, when we were 11, were like one of my best friends in childhood, still keep in touch with her on the Facebook. It's good for that. But she stole gum from the hobby shop, and they caught her on the way out because she was 11 and wasn't subtle about it. It was just like... shoving it in her pockets.
To bring this back to wrestling, when I was a teenager and I was too old to feel comfortable paying for wrestling figures, which I would then feel comfortable with again later in my 20s.
Sure.
But at that point I wasn't. But I was still perfectly comfortable stealing them from Kmart.
So you would just stuff them down your underpants, and ladies would be like, damn, Ben, is that an action figure in your pants, or are you just happy to see me?
Val Venus?
Well, actually, Al Snow featuring Head.
Man,
LOL.
That figure became worth some money once they banned it because they said that the head was indicative of violence against women. You know.
Really, it was more of a blowjob joke, though.
It was a blowjob joke.
It was completely a blowjob
Well, he
joke.
was walking around with what people thought was a woman's severed head.
It was a mannequin head that he would talk to. In fact, if you watch the show, the head held authority over him. The head was his manager.
Was this around the time of the popular mannequin duology of films?
No, it was
this
well
was
after.
a solid 10 years later.
Yeah, this was 99, 2000 or so. Al Snow's a journeyman wrestler who never quite got a gimmick that worked, and then one day in ECW, he was like, well, instead of just complaining, how about I complain to, like, this mannequin head and, like, be like, my career's not going anywhere, and everyone thought it was great, so he just went with it.
For the rest of his career.
Yeah, for the rest of his career.
I remember I watched a video on YouTube of him talking to a bunch of students. And he's talking to them about having a finish or having a finishing move.
Yeah.
And he's like, how many of you guys have a finishing move? And they all raise their hand. And he's like, you're all lying. It's not a finishing move unless you've actually beaten anybody with it.
He's right.
And he's like, what's my finishing move? And they're all like, the snow plow. He's like, hell no, I never beat anybody with the snow plow. My finishing move was hitting a guy with the fucking mannequin head.
Yeah, that's the only thing he lost. Even when he was over, he lost most of his matches. And when he won, it was because he hit people with the head.
Today we are going to be talking about AJ Lee. This is Contesting Wrestling. I stole Evan's line. Ha 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 ha.
That, you know what? I mean, it's a lot of pressure off of me, I'll be honest. I have to introduce every episode. I have to remind myself what we're called.
So we're doing Premium AJ now?
Premium
yes,
AJ.
Premium AJ. No, I also deleted the AJ episode, guys.
No, we also have to do Mini-Sode AJ in this session.
Right,
so.
okay, yeah. So
You're watching Contesting Wrestling. My name is... Cut that out.
Catchy.
Got all that out.
It is. Oh, it's a toe tapper.
No, cut that out, Evan. Trust me.
It's all on your Twitter, though.
Not the part.
Right. Maybe cut out the That's a cruel inside joke.
It's really hard to cut out the middle two words of a long...
Cut the whole thing out. Let's start over.
It's funnier when you say cut it out and then he leaves it in.
That's true.
Well, that's actually, I have to say, I do.
She'll never hear
I
this
wind up
anyway.
leaving it a lot of stuff in that I say, oh, I'm going to cut out on the podcast, because then when I'm listening back to it, it's either less horrible than I thought it was, or if I was to cut it out, I'd have to cut out a bunch of other things that would make it not make sense, and I don't care to put that much effort into editing.
So this is the premium compliment to the episode that we did on AJ Lee. And the matches that we're watching for this episode are, first of all, AJ Lee against Naomi Knight for the FCW, that's Florida Championship Wrestling.
That answers the first question I wrote down, so that's good.
The FCW Divas Championship. This match was taped on December 10th, 2010, and then it aired in the very small market in which the FCW program aired in Florida.
Which I was in.
On January 23rd, 2011. You were in FCW?
I didn't. I would catch it intermittently. It's like, so I would, when NXTs, the original NXTs were happening, I was like way more excited than everyone else when they announced random FCW guys because I'd seen them. I knew Johnny Curtis was great when they put him on FCW.
Oh, yeah.
I remember
when they put him on FCW.
I remember, I just want to point out, Naomi had this is very early Naomi, she still had her last name. Naomi had only been wrestling like a year and a half total when this match aired. She was already clearly going to be good. Like, I remember watching her first few televised matches when she had like minimal training, like they gave girls before throwing them in matches back then, and like being like, wait, you get it already. Like, you're not good, but like she clearly like understood the athletic parts of it enough and had charisma.
She's clearly an insane athlete.
To
anyone who watches her wrestle for a minute.
I fucking rep Naomi so hard and always have. I respect Naomi so much as a wrestler because she's someone that was like, she was finally getting to the top of the division back in about like 2012 or so, and then the division exploded around her. Then the women's revolution happened around her, and suddenly she wasn't anywhere near the top of the division. They're like, the bar's higher for you now. She's like, okay. And then got way incredible because that's what she had to do.
Yeah, and eventually did get her big moment being the women's champion at WrestleMania.
Oh, she'll be champion again at some point, I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah, given the way she was looking in the Rumble this year.
She looked incredible, and her hair looked incredible. I love her hair so much.
There were GIFs going around of her, right?
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of people sharing those. She was fucking awesome in this match.
The black girl with the very natural-like hair.
Yeah.
That was Naomi.
That's her about 8 years on. You know.
Damn.
So at this point, she was she was the inaugural FCW Divas champion. She had won it in a tournament. She beat Serena Deeb, I think, in the final of the tournament. She had it for about 6 months until this match with AJ Lee, where AJ beat her.
Yeah.
Before they had the FCW Divas title, and B, you might talk a little bit about this. The only championship that the women had in FCW was the Queen of FCW, Tiara. That they wrestled for.
It was basically a beauty queen.
The belt
title.
looked stupid. The FCW women's
it
belt.
Was pink and
tiny. It's not even the color. It's so little. It's like insultingly small. Like, you're a tiny woman. Here's your tiny toy belt. I still hate the Divas one even more, but the FCW one was pretty bad.
And the Queen of FCW thing was still around at this point.
It was.
You see Rosa Mendez with it.
Is that who that was?
Yes. There's a parade of the divas in FCW that comes out at the beginning of the match.
Yeah,
I know Caitlyn was one of them.
She was very fresh.
Oksana was the ring announcer, and that was not great.
Was Rachel Diaz out there?
She might have been. Raquel Diaz?
Was it Rachel or Raquel?
Raquel.
It was Raquel, okay.
Who is Eddie Guerrero's daughter. And
Vicky's daughter, too.
And Vicky's daughter as well. And who ended up being the longest reigning FCW Divas champion.
Yeah, she didn't stay around. You could tell, though, she had clearly gotten her mother's talents. Because Vicky and Eddie are talented in two very separate ways. Raquel was way more Vicky than Eddie, and I mean that in a very positive way. Like, she had that same like shrillness.
So I did watch a bunch of FCW because even though I wasn't in the TV market, I would torrent it, and when people actually uploaded it, which was sort of inconsistently, I'd be able to watch it. And I saw some of Raquel Diaz there, and I think also she left and came back and was in NXT for a little while as well. And I thought character-wise she was amazing. I don't really remember her wrestling very well.
I went to a couple FCW live shows. I met and got a picture that I no longer have with Christian at one of those shows. So he was so nice. I remember you'd go to those shows and you'd see the guys they just signed working crew. Biggie was working security. Derek Bateman took and ripped my ticket.
Wow.
Yeah, Biggie was working security. Yeah.
All right, let's let Evan talk.
Fuck Evan. I'm sorry, Evan. Please don't fire me.
No, it's fine. I don't have firing power on this. At least I don't think I do.
You're the referee.
Yeah.
Oh, Evan, you're fired.
Disqualified.
There we go. That's better. Yeah, I was like, refs don't have firing power. That seems like, I honestly, man, I just fucking like this match. Like, this is one of those matches where I didn't take a lot of notes because I was just watching it, and my last note was, could have been longer.
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
Possibly the first match we have watched that I have felt that way about.
I think Naomi and AJ had quite a few matches over this title after this one. This was the first one that I found on YouTube when I looked for them. And I think looking at a bunch of them afterwards, I think this was actually the longest. But Naomi and AJ was the first AJ Lee match I watched during one of the random FCW episodes that I caught. And I was immediately liked them. I thought they were great. Our friend Jason, the first time he saw AJ Lee, he just completely fell in love. And he knew. But yeah,
I knew too.
But it was definitely apparent to me in watching this that this was definitely a different kind of wrestling match than we were seeing from the women on the main roster at all.
I had a tangential thought, like something that was sort of a meta thought about wrestling that occurred to me while I was watching this. One of the commentators says a line that's a dumb line, which is he's like, "Oh, she's a little quirky for me." When AJ comes out.
Oh, who was that announcer? He made me so mad. He made me so mad. Yeah. He was like trying to do Lawler, and even by then Lawler was tired, and he's not as great as Lawler, so he can't get away with it.
He was like, "That's not the kind of girl that I would date in high school."
And then the other guy was trying to call the match.
Yeah. So what it had me thinking about was I have been trying to suss out the similarities and the differences between wrestling characters and like comedy characters. At one point in my life, I spent a lot of money at an improv and sketch theater in New York City and learned some valuable things and a lot of dumb things that now just take up space in my brain. But one thing is, the basic concept of a character, of a comedic character and the character game. An example being, you're watching Kids in the Hall and the crushing your head guy. When he goes, "I'm crushing your head," that he's hitting his character game. The the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Every time he loses a limb and he's like, "I'm just gonna power through this." That is his character game. The character game is the chorus in the song that is this character and their action. Yeah. Now, at first, I was like, oh, wrestling characters, it's pretty much the same thing. 1-to-1 ratio. They come out, they do their thing. That's the thing that you want. But it seems a little more complicated than that. It's a more complicated, it's because the wrestlers often don't necessarily have just one thing that is their deal. And it also got me thinking about the role that commentators play or don't play if they are not good in establishing those characters. And I guess I was just going to ask you guys, like, what do you feel that there is a big role that the commentators play, or is it like sort of just left to the wrestlers to establish their characters, or what?
They certainly can. Commentators can be very important when establishing characters, especially if the wrestlers aren't doing it themselves very well. If you're a very good wrestler, you can do it all yourself in the ring, silent theater style. But especially in a place like FCW where everybody's still training, you kind of want good commentators. Unfortunately, you also get commentators in training at FCW, which is where you get like the guy who was trying to be way too straight and the guy who was trying to be way too skeezy.
It also depends what kind of fans you have and whether they're good at picking up on subtle cues and stuff like that. But in wrestling, when you want people to get the idea, you're not really expecting your audience in most wrestling organizations, in WWE in particular, to be particularly savvy or sophisticated or paying very close attention to things. They try to make things as obvious as possible. And for a television audience, that's what the commentators are really doing. A lot of the times, they're just stating the obvious.
Yeah, and a bad commentator can like ruin a match. Like that guy was almost ruining the match. Like a guy that's just talking to himself because he likes the sound of his own voice can ruin a match. Yeah.
You know, if you watch this match, like, okay, you know, AJ's wearing these like high top Chuck Taylors or whatever. Yeah. You might get the idea that she's kind of a geek or kind of a tomboy or like something like that, but it's not obvious, right?
No, it's only obvious if the only other women you ever interact with are like models,
right?
Who all act like models on television.
To us who have grown up with normal women,
right?
She's a woman.
I will say, like, if I didn't know that she had the whole like that they had really pushed the she's like crazy angle, like to me, AJ Reeds is just like everyone's kid sister kind of. Right. I get big kid sister energy from AJ Lee.
By the way, she really is kind of rail thin at this time.
Yeah.
And in her autobiography, she talks about how she was having a lot of trouble buying food. Like, she was very poor. Man. She had spent all of her money. She had borrowed money from her sister in order to pay for this one WWE tryout. Yeah. And then she had to move down to Florida and, like, this was a really, really tough time in her life.
At the time, if you had just a developmental contract, like sometimes you'd be making $400 or $500 a week, and like that's you'd be living in the Tampa area. You'd have to drive yourself back and forth. You'd have to get all your own gear and get yourself to all of the shows, and it's really like it was a problem. People in developmental who don't have any cachet behind them still don't make a lot of money, but they make a full-time living now. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, this match, like, they do a lot of really cool stuff. They're both very clearly athletic. AJ, I think, presents a really good idea of being a ring general and working the match. Their timing still needed some work. They still needed to get some reps in, I think, before it got really clean.
Yeah, Naomi is pretty like really green here. Like, she's fine, but she's just little things. She misses to clean it up a little bit.
She misses the top rope when she goes to run the ropes and falls out of the ring. Like, that wasn't something they planned to do. She reached out to run the ropes, and this is a thing that can happen when you practice. And instead of putting her arm on the top rope and leaning back, her arm went under the top rope, and then she leaned back, and then her head went out of the ring, and then the rest of her body just fell out of the ring, because that's what happens when, you miss the top rope when you're trying to run the ropes. Right, it happens. It happens in training. This is why you do it. They wrestled a very basic style of a match. None of them did any, like, really flashy moves.
There was one big spot where Naomi does, like, a tigre roll from the apron into the ring, and she goes for something, and AJ reverses it into like a slick knee strike. Yeah, that was kind of a cool spot. But beyond that,
right. And I don't mean to insult the match by saying that. I thought it was very good for what they were doing. Also,
I thought it was great for Naomi's experience level. People don't realize how little a year and a half gets you in wrestling.
And I would imagine part of why you like drill falling so much is that if you do fuck up, or if somebody else is throwing you and they fuck up or something like that, it's just sort of ingrained in your body how you can fall. You can deal with an unexpected situation and still come out of it, hopefully not injured.
Exactly. You learn to fall like a cat. It's not so much it's a move that you do
onto
to fall.
Somebody's stomach, claws out, and then jump off of them, leaving them on the couch with mac and cheese all over it because they spilled it because my fucking cat sorry, keep going.
Did you watch Raw last week? No, I'm joking. But I mean, obviously, like, cats don't fall on their back, they fall on their feet, but you fall like a cat in that you fall in a in a very natural fashion. So no matter what angle you're falling at, you know how you're going to hit the ground and how to minimize the impact of it, or how to, like, turn and roll with it. The thing about Raw, I haven't been watching Raw just because I haven't been liking watching Raw, but I wanted to see the Edge segment. And of course on Raw they played Edge's theme song dozens of times.
On the street.
Yeah, by Alter Bridge. Oh, earlier you guessed it was like Creed with a different singer and it was Alter Bridge. You know what the name of that song is?
No, what?
Metalingus.
Is that like if you were to go down on cunnilingus?
Wow, that's interesting.
Metalingus.
The language of metal.
So it's like you're filleting a pole, a metal pole.
A robot.
I did not hear that L in there.
Metalingus.
Yes. I thought
That's
meta.
what happened
I got
between
you there.
Data and Tasha Yar.
That's what you do with your Marilyn Monroe bot.
Excellent.
Yeah,
but I got through. I got through
just
the whole
put
thing.
a
It was all right.
flashlight on my Roomba. And then get my nuts all dusty.
You gotta make sure it's not like post-poop fiasco Roomba. Did you know about that?
Are you pooping in your Roomba?
No,
You shouldn't do
no.
that.
Apparently, if
It's
you
just
have
for
like one of the automated robot Roombas, when you're not home and like it senses poop, it'll go try to clean up the poop, but smear poop everywhere. And this is a thing that happens regularly to people.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no,
Hold
look
on.
up Roombas.
Will it like attack the cat's litter box or something?
No. Like it won't go after the litter box, but if you have like one of the good Roombas that's like robotic,
But
and
It will
just
go after your ass?
like they
no. If you have like a dog or something, and the dog poops on the floor, and like, you're not.
Okay.
We're all cat people
There
here,
we
so
go.
none of us thought a dog.
Because when you were like, because I was like,
Well,
unaware
we
of
do have
the.
a dog here who does eat cat poop out of the litter box
And then poops.
drops some of it on the floor.
So keep
and then
your
poops out cat poop.
I just
keep your
I guess that could
Roomba
happen.
away from that then.
I just in my head I was like the Roomba like could just sense poop, and then so like if
Sense
you were
species, yes.
you were taking a shit in your house, the Roomba would come and be like, that's fucking mine now, and like fight you for it, and you're on the toilet
boy.
and like
and it's just ramming into your asshole
your
over
pants
and over.
are around your ankles. You're trying to fight the Roomba, but you can't get up,
And
then
Imagine it could like project a funnel out of itself
Yeah.
so you could just shit into it wherever you were.
I mean that is what the
That's
new Roombas
genius.
are gonna
You know
be,
who I
yeah.
blame?
Who do
The
you
Paw
blame?
Patrol.
The Paw
That
Patrol.
is,
All
it's
those-
John Cena and his fucking band of snitch dogs.
Snitchmations.
So back to the match between AJ Lee and Naomi Knight. AJ Lee does the Black Widow. I didn't realize that she had already been using it that far back, but she wins the match with a standing slice bread number 2.
Yeah.
Which was very good.
The announcer was very, very enthusiastic about the.
Is
sliced bread
it
number
called
two.
that because it's the best thing since sliced bread? It's
Exactly.
Like the new, okay. Cool.
Named
Make
by
sure,
the
yeah.
great Brian Kendrick.
The octopus maneuver always looks so cool.
Yeah.
Whenever,
Yeah.
whenever
And
is that what that's what it's called, right? That's what they refer to it as. In
That's
this.
what they call it. She called it the Black Widow. Yeah, I guess it's when you have the leg over the head, it's
Oh
the
yeah,
octopus.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's a perfect submission hold for a tiny person because
Yeah.
like you put all your weight on the other person and you wrap yourself around them and you get their limbs in such a way that it doesn't matter that they're bigger than you. Anything they move makes it hurt more.
You know, it's a shame for a lot of reasons that intergender wrestling was not happening in WWE for a long time. But man,
Yeah.
what I would have given to see a match between AJ Lee and Rey Mysterio.
Oh yeah,
What I would have given
sure.
to see a match between AJ Lee and the Big Show.
yeah.
That
well.
also would have been great.
Well, you remember when the Big Show ran AJ Lee down when he was feuding with Daniel Bryan, right? Remember that?
That must have been during a point I was checked out.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, they had that whole angle, and AJ was on the outside, and Big Show was running, and AJ got in the way, and
Oh, that's right. He just
Right.
crushed her.
yeah, no, it's great. He knocked AJ down, and then Daniel Bryan like started yelling at him, like, "Look what you did, you idiot!" And then Big Show started crying, wrestling,
Oh, I remember the crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because he's like, "I don't know my own strength. I'm sorry,"
I did see a random Facebook video that somebody
Yeah.
posted of like actual, not actual wrestling, but like of amateur wrestling.
Yeah,
I
amateur
suppose,
wrestling.
Or the kind that those amateurs.
Fake wrestling.
Those kinds, the bullshit wrestling they do with the bullshit Olympics,
Yeah, the
known
Olympics
also
are
as
rigged,
the
folks.
Olympics.
Oh man.
And
The Olympics are a fix
it
by
is.
the Paw Patrol.
It is. Here's one thing that's great about the Olympics is that it's a great time for a lot of very awkward young people to fuck each other's brains out in another
Oh
country.
yeah, apparently
So,
it is a
good for
grand.
them.
That's
old
like
time.
Birthright. Israel Birthright. right?
Kind of, it's like birthright for really for the best athletes in the world.
You saw a clip going around of some
thank you.
amateur wrestling.
Thank you.
I
And
think
it's-
I know the clip.
it's
It's
very-
been going viral.
Yes, it's very impressive to watch.
Yeah.
It's very.
It was a couple of lighter weight guys really going around each other and
Yeah.
like fiercely trying to wrestle each other to the mat. Very good pro wrestlers can do that and make it look real, but if it's quite their style. Matches between Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit famously had long sequences with that, you know?
I would like to one day, once we've run out of interesting wrestlers to do episodes about, maybe do something where we talk about like the similarities or differences or influence of amateur wrestling and watch some like some of that.
Maybe watch Kurt Angle win his Olympic gold medal or something like that.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
With a broken freaking neck.
With a broken freaking neck. So I just wanted to point out that AJ ended up holding this FCW Diva title for 4 months until she was beaten by Oksana, who unified the title with the Queen of FCW crown. There were only a handful of FCW Divas champions before they transitioned to NXT.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, FCW is basically prototype NXT. When you watch it, it's clearly like very similar to what became early NXT when NXT stopped being the
reality show.
Oh, we gotta show Evan the first season of NXT. We gotta do 3 separate NXT. Or 4. No, because the 4th one. No, there was 5. The 5th one.
We should do maybe the first season and then maybe the women's season. Yeah. If anything.
No, we should do all of them.
Well, we should do the first season and see how it goes, because the first season is actually very interesting.
By the way, did you notice they mentioned what the main event for this FCW show was going to be?
No, I did not. What did they say?
What was it?
Colonel Damian Sandow, which I have not seen, and I want to know what that's all about because I love Damian Sandow, teaming with Titus O'Neil against Richie Steamboat and Seth Rollins.
Oh, Richie Steamboat. Apparently he was good, but didn't he get out or get injured?
He's Ricky Steamboat's son. Oh, by the way, there's a thing about that in one of the other matches.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. He's Ricky Steamboat's son. He was good, and then he got injured, and then just was never heard from again. I don't know what happened.
I think he got real. I think he got like career. They suggested retirement, and he went with it.
Yeah, he was still very young. They were like, maybe you could do something else with your life, and he was like, "Ow, I guess I'll do something else with my life," and that's perfectly valid.
They keep telling me to do something else with my life.
It's unusual to have a nickname and also a made-up last name. That just seems weird. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Only one of those things is a name. I don't know. Like I just maybe that's nitpicky.
Well, Steamboat is very special.
It's supposed to be his real last name, although it's not.
His name is
right.
Richard
That's
Blood.
my point. Is that it's clearly not.
His name is Richard Blood, which seems like a much more appropriate wrestling name.
So metal. Richard the Dragon Blood.
Well, his name is Dick Blood.
He actually started wrestling as Dick Blood in the 70s.
And then he had to stop because his name was Dick Blood.
I didn't know if I wanted to say hot or metal there.
So
both.
So let me set this up a little bit. We decided, in the AJ Lee episode, we watched the match where she was the referee for CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE title. So I thought, because there aren't that many really long AJ Lee matches, she wasn't around for that long.
And they weren't giving the women time. Like, I wanted to mention that. You said, like, oh, the AJ Naomi match could have been longer. Like, that was a long match for the women on television at that time.
They regularly would get, like, 2 to 3 minutes because so many of them could barely work.
I mean, the AJ Paige match we're talking about was, like, 2.5 minutes long.
And if you'll notice, they have all the other, like, women's in the division out there because there wasn't going to be another segment on the show with any women in it. So that was just all they got.
So I thought we could talk about another CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan, then Bryan Danielson match. So this is the very first match between Punk and Danielson from Ring of Honor Reborn Stage 1 on April 24th, 2004.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube on Ring of Honor's official YouTube channel.
And the reason why it is ROH Reborn is it's because it's shortly after the Rob Feinstein scandal, which we've mentioned to you before.
What
he was the guy
again?
who was caught on To Catch a Predator.
Oh, right.
Straight up, like, got had by someone claiming to be a 14-year-old boy on the internet. To which his response was the infamous, Doc, you take it.
Lol, I'll pretend you said 18.
Verbatim.
Wow. Ring of Honor
Yeah.
and
Right.
sex crime.
Well, they got him out of the company pretty promptly
Immediately.
after that.
I would hope so. I would
Yeah.
hope that there wasn't a meeting like where some guys were like, I don't know, Rob's all right. Like
He was still in business doing RF video for
He's
a while.
still
after
in
that.
business.
He's still
doing
in
our
business.
video.
it's almost as if there's a systemic problem when it comes to prosecuting sex offenders.
I will also say most of the major wrestling and medium wrestling companies just don't do business with him anymore, and they haven't for basically since this. But he has such a backlog of stuff that he owns, and he produces like shoot interviews, which are pretty seedy in the first place anyway. So that's what his business model mostly is. But yeah, don't look for him to be on any upcoming WWE Network specials or anything. His name is going to be about as erased from history as it can be.
So Ricky Steamboat is the referee for this match, and there was this short period of time where he was a personality in Ring of Honor. He didn't have any actual matches. So earlier in this show, he was supposed to be the referee for a match between CM Punk's friend and tag team partner Colt Cabana and a guy named BJ Whitmer. And so the story is Punk comes out during that match and jumps Steamboat and takes him out. Also, so Cabana comes to the ring wearing Steamboat's like old gear, like he'd wear like a karate gi, holding a Cabbage Patch doll, which is supposed to represent WrestleMania 4 when Ricky Steamboat came out with his infant child.
Richie Steamboat.
Richie Steamboat. So, he was literally born into the business. So they were making fun of him in that way. Punk jumps Steamboat, so he can't be the ref for that match. So then he comes out at the beginning of the Punk Danielson match, and he's like, Ring of Honor paid me to ref a match, so I'm going to ref this one, to the chagrin of CM Punk, who's a big heel at the time. He's having this feud. I don't know what exactly was the nature of his beef with Steamboat. Do you remember?
I don't.
I did like that that there was that whole sort of storyline throughout the match of him and Steamboat having beef, and you kind of go and focus on it. It almost felt like not a triple threat at times, but just that there were there were multiple antagonisms happening.
They would have wanted to have a match between Punk and Steamboat. Steamboat had a specific insurance settlement where he got a big old payout if he would stop wrestling matches. A lot of guys of his generation got that, like
The
a company
Lords of
called
London.
Lloyd's of London. They would get a clause in their insurance saying that if they suffered a career-ending injury, then they could cash out for some, insane amount. Except a career-ending injury to most athletes is like a regular everyday injury to a wrestler. Like if you're a football player and you tear your ACL, you might have your career be over. If you're a wrestler and you tear your ACL, you're out 8 to 10 months, and then you just come back.
So if you get the settlement from Lloyd's of London and then you wrestle another match, they sue your ass.
Right.
For insurance
Oh,
fraud.
wow.
But it's not specifically that you can't do anything physical. Him and Punk did have a couple of fights in Ring of Honor that weren't like official matches that have physical confrontations. Eventually, Steamboat would have another couple of matches many years after this for the WWE, who got a couple of the Lloyd's of London guys to have matches, and I'm sure they paid big for it. The WWE, that is.
Yeah, they would pay it off.
Yeah.
And there was a story about Rick Rude asking Eric Bischoff to pay off his Lloyd's of London thing so he could wrestle in WCW, and Bischoff wouldn't do it.
I heard, and I'm not quite sure if this is substantiated, I heard that Road Warrior Animal, when he had that little comeback in like 2006 or whatever it was on SmackDown, his deal was that he couldn't have the rigors of singles matches, but he was allowed to wrestle in tag matches.
Interesting.
Which, I mean, if you know anything about wrestling, that's absolutely ridiculous. But
that's completely ridiculous.
But that's why he always had tag matches. He needed a new Road Warrior, so they got Heidenreich, or he was in Battle Royals or whatever.
That's hilarious. If you know anything if you know anything about the Road Warriors, you would know that was a really bad deal.
Yeah, definitely.
The Animal was always a tag team wrestler. But I wanted to say to you, Evan, I remember during the main feed episode about AJ, you had commented that you really liked the dynamic of having a referee in a match who has sort of their own prerogative.
Yeah.
And so this was another thing along those lines.
No, I totally. I thought this was a good match. I didn't like it as much as the other one, just because honestly, I mean,
me neither.
They were not as experienced. Like you could tell, they were both really good. they were both impressive, but like you could tell that they were both like 20, and and there just wasn't as much of a story. Like this match went on, I felt a bit long.
That's most Ring of Honor matches at the time.
I mean, the main story that was being told was around, well, number one, CM Punk's problems with Ricky Steamboat, and then number two, at some point in the match, Punk does a split leg moonsault, Danielson puts his knees up, and Punk catches it in the midsection, and Danielson works the abs, which is not something you see all that often, eventually defeating him with the abdominal stretch, which is thought of as sort of the most like routine, one of the most routine, boring wrestling holds, but they work it in such a way that you sort of believe it as the finish. It was actually Bret Hart's finisher in Canada at the very beginning of his career, and it's involved in one of my favorite moments in Bryan Danielson's career ever, where he's wrestling Alex Shelley at a show called Arena Warfare. There was a feud between Ring of Honor and the hardcore wrestling company CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling, and they actually did a show where they divided the arena so that half of the seats were for CZW fans and half were for Ring of Honor fans, and then they did a double header show. So the CZW fans are there watching Bryan Danielson's technical wrestling match, and they start chanting boring. And he goes, "Oh, you want boring? It's abdominal stretch time." And he puts it on. And that was when I knew he was my favorite wrestler.
I love he would put someone in the abdominal stretch and then like smile at the crowd and just wait. And then the crowd would start chanting boring. And then the crowd would start booing. And then with his free hand, he would give the crowd the finger. And
That's fantastic.
he's just so brilliant.
I had all right. So I had a simple question that then will lead to another meta question. How tall is Bryan Danielson?
I mean, I saw him up close once. He's about an inch and a half shorter than me, so he's only about 6'9". No, I'm joking. He is about an inch and a half shorter than me, so he must
You are freakishly gigantic.
Look,
People don't realize that.
Look, if you're a 5'3" man in wrestling, you're 5'8". Damn it! It
Hey,
says so on your
I'm
roster
5'8".
page.
All right.
It says so on your roster
Okay,
page.
so let me tell you a story about that. I'm actually 5'8". I remember the first time I went
5'8"?
into.
Really?
I am 5'8". Yes.
You see, you have a taller man's energy.
I have a lot of presence,
it's
and the
butt.
hair
It sticks,
also.
It's the butt. It sticks out so far.
When I first went to wrestling school, the first wrestling school I went to was with Johnny Rods, WWE Hall of Famer in Brooklyn. Hi, Johnny. I'm sure you're not listening, but I'm about to tell you a story. He said, "How tall are you?" And I said, "I'm 5'8". And without missing a beat, he looked at me. He said, "You're 5'10". I said, "All right, I'm 5'10".
That's how wrestling works. I remember my dad being like, they have lifts in their boots. And maybe some of them did.
Oh, Jericho sure did.
I have about a 3/4 lift in my boots that I got custom made. They're very nice boots.
But it was also just inflation, just
Right.
by fiat.
I was about 5'10" for most of my life, and then over the last years, I've like fixed up my posture and all stuff. I'm about 5'11", and now being 5'11", it is in many ways the most tragic height, because it is a height at which many people will say to you, "Oh, you're tall," and you'll always think deep down inside yourself, "I'm not actually tall."
Yeah, you're not 6 feet.
Yeah,
There was some meme where it's like, I don't know. It might have either been the Drake meme, where he doesn't like the one thing and then he likes the other thing, but it was like girls if you're 5'11", if you're a guy who's 5'11", versus girls if you're a guy who's 6 feet.
Oh, I hate girls like that.
Yeah.
Like everyone's allowed to have their preferences.
I'm afraid it might be kind of true.
By the way, Drake likes to groom young girls.
Oh yeah, it's real fucked up. It's real fucked up. Lots of underage female celebrities that he texts about their dating life. It's
He's
not
that
okay.
good either.
Yeah. Also, I don't get the thing.
He's
Hotline Bling is like the least energy I ever heard anybody put into a song that became massively popular.
He's had a couple catchy tunes, but I prefer a lot of his contemporaries.
Drake grooms teenage girls. Just so we're clear.
The larger question that I had, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to steal thunder from that.
No, go on.
Drake.
It's just a message that has to get out.
No.
We can
I
get
just
back
wanted
to
to
this
get
yet.
the message
But
out on
it's
record.
Good. It's good
So
stuff.
to answer your question, Bryan Danielson's about 5'6.5",
So larger question.
and Punk's a little taller.
How much do wrestling fans care about stats.
Not that much.
Not
It
just
depends on the
height and weight,
fans.
not just height and weight, but all like
The Ring of Honor fans at the time cared a lot.
Hardcore wrestling fans care about stats. They want to care about it more. But wrestling very seldom gives them the stats that they would want. AEW has tried to like even keep track of wins and losses, and I think it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because you can't have a league completely dictated by wins and losses, because then the stories don't make any sense. You can have a real sport dictated by wins and losses, and then sometimes, the best stories don't happen, but the best teams win. Yeah, whenever, like if say the Mets and the Yankees are both in the World Series, like everyone in New York is like, oh yeah, everyone else in the country just doesn't watch the World Series because they don't care. But in wrestling, like, you have to just put forth whatever will draw the most people, even if one of the guys lost. CM Punk around this time, when he would he did a couple of shoot interviews in 2004 and 2005, and he would complain about how fans would complain that he had a poor win-loss record in Ring of Honor, being like, it doesn't matter, I put people over. It's like, oh, I lost a match. Yeah, I'll lose a match. It's fine. I can overcome that. And then I get a title match, and people are like, but he lost his last, whatever. Just watch the match.
I want to point out one of the great things about Ring of Honor at the time, and that you really see if you listen to the commentary and pay attention to what's going on in this match, is all the intertwining storylines. Like, they're talking about this whole thing between Bryan Danielson and Samoa Joe against the Briscoes. They're talking about how Danielson's going to wrestle Homicide the next night, who's wrestling Joe that night. There's the whole Steamboat Punk thing, which intersects with Colt Cabana and their feud with the Briscoes. Apparently at the end of this match, Cabana comes out and he and Punk menace Steamboat, and then the Briscoes come out and run them off. And it was just this cool, more novelesque sense of wrestling storytelling, where it's not just this clear hierarchy where there's, 6 or 8 different feuds that are fairly self-contained, and there's clearly a hierarchy of them, where there's the main title feud and then everything else is, less important, and there's degrees of importance. Any feud could be the main event at any Ring of Honor show, and any match could happen at any Ring of Honor show. And if it was a match with 2 people who are involved in other feuds, all the better, because now both of their stories are colliding in this match.
And the sole commentator was also the head booker, who was explaining all of this to everyone the whole
Gabe
time.
Sapolsky,
Yeah,
yes.
Gabe Sapolsky. And
I think he was Jimmy Bauer at this point.
Yeah, I believe he was calling himself Jimmy Bauer. He's in Full Impact Pro in Florida. He called himself Matt Pike. But the
side note, many years ago, I saw the legendary Jimmy Bauer's band I Hate God.
I was there
Sludge metal mavens, and I Hate God
at CBGB's.
Yes, CBGB's. One of the only bands I've ever seen where I was just like, I hope the singer's okay. Like, I hope he's doing all right. Like, goddamn. And then I guess that's his deal. They still tour. Same guy.
fine.
I saw them at, I think, Lucky 13 a few years ago, and they're still great.
Yeah.
Good.
Does the singer still have the same energy?
Yeah, oh, totally.
Like, where I was just like,
No,
yeah.
He might live another 15, 20 years.
I hope so.
Well, I wanted to point out about Ring of Honor's thing there, where you brought up any match could be the main event. This fed into their business model. Like, they had only been in a league for about 2 years at this point, 2.5 years. And their business model was that they sold every show as a VHS or DVD. So every show had to be uniquely desirable by a wrestling fan, which isn't the case if all of your main events feature the same guy, or you have 2 guys in a program where they main event several shows in a row. But if any match on the card could be the main event, then every show you do can put an emphasis on a different match, which means that every DVD you put out is desirable for a different reason. It worked for a few years, long enough to launch the careers of a ton of guys.
I'd love to watch like a series of Ring of Honor shows with you, Evan.
Sure.
It's a lot because they're 3 hours or more long.
They're full shows.
Well, I will say everything that I have seen from Ring of Honor, even when I don't like it, I still think it is interesting and well executed, and I would rather watch than 90% of the WWE.
I think if we watched like the whole Summer of Punk thing,
Yeah,
that might be kind of cool. Starting from The Future Is Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the original Summer of Punk.
Yeah, the
Okay.
original Summer of Punk in Ring of Honor.
Pause for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the original Summer of Punk, because most wrestling fans think of the Summer of Punk of like, oh, when he won the WWE title and all that. No, a few years previous,
Summer
like,
of Punk.
Yeah, that was incredible.
We went to one of those shows too.
We did in Connecticut.
Thanks again to Brian's parents for driving us to Connecticut.
Yeah.
Especially because driving in Connecticut seems like the actual worst.
Oh boy.
That one, like Connecticut one, that one highway is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anytime I've had to drive through like Connecticut up to Massachusetts, it's like a shit show. I don't drive. I sit in the back and let other people drive. Anyone who has ever let me sit in the back while you drive, thank you so much. I appreciate you. But it's because it seems like the worst thing ever to have to drive through those few states.
I will say I don't drive, but I know my father, who has spent a huge chunk of his life driving all through southern New England, New York, New Jersey, the whole area, says that the place that he is most afraid of other drivers by a huge margin is Long Island.
I've heard Jersey on the Turnpike.
I mean, it's the same people live in North Jersey
true.
and Long Island, and the confluence of hating everyone else and also hating yourself, and so not caring as you drive because you too long for death because you live in Montclair.
Montclair is beautiful.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Evan's never
There are
been there. He
parts
just
of-
wants to shit
There
on
are parts of Long Island that are really nice. That are
there's
really,
definitely
yeah.
worse parts of Jersey that you can
okay,
shit on.
all right, I'll cut that. I probably won't.
Shit.
Shit on
No,
it.
but
it's fine.
I'm saying like
Englewood is kind of nice too.
all of
Fecal matter.
all of the parts of Long Island that don't have people in it are beautiful, but everywhere where there's people, it's the worst.
Actual duty.
Yeah,
I liked Montauk when I went to Montauk.
it's great where if you get out where the people aren't. It's
Yeah,
nice.
the Hamptons are wonderful if you don't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Stranger
Talk to
Things
anybody.
was almost called Montauk.
Though I do love,
would've been
you know,
interesting.
my friends in
Look
East
at
Hampton.
the original manuscript was called Montauk.
So just a few things I wanted to say about this match, moments that I really loved.
Mm-hmm.
So Punk does the heel thing where he complains that Danielson pulled his hair when he didn't. And then Steamboat just pulls Punk's hair and is like, this is what it's like to get your hair pulled, okay?
Oh, I loved that. Yeah, that was great.
There's just a great counter of the cattle mutilation by Danielson. Punk counters it into basically the unprettier.
Yeah.
Christian's move. That was
gets
pretty
him
awesome.
up and drops him down.
There's one great part where Danielson kicks out at 2 and the camera is right by Punk and he just says fuck.
I saw that. Yeah, I caught that. He mouths it. You don't hear it, but you just see.
It was audible. And then the announcer Sapolsky actually picks up on this, and it's funny because it's sort of foreshadowing for later in Danielson's career.
Yeah.
Danielson is trying to do a superplex on Punk
yeah.
off the top, and the crowd starts chanting yes, no, like a dueling chant between factions in the crowd. Though I think most of them were behind Danielson in this match.
They were, yeah.
But it was like yes, no, which of course would come to define Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan in the
Years
WWE.
later, yeah.
You want to move on to AJ Page?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, all right, here are my thoughts about this fucking
let me
match.
introduce the match.
Yeah.
So the match is between AJ Lee and Paige on Monday Night Raw, April 7th, 2014 for the Divas title. This is the night after WrestleMania 30, the night after AJ defeated the entire Divas division in the Vicky Guerrero Invitational that we talked about in the main feed. So she comes out, she talks about how she defeated the entire roster. She's there with Tamina. She says that, I prove that I'm the hero of this story. I love that line.
That's a
I mean,
great
to
line.
me, she was.
She is the Divas division, right?
She says she is the Divas. Well, first she says she's the greatest diva in history, to which the crowd starts chanting CM Punk, which I thought was funny. Like, are you trying to say that CM Punk was the greatest diva in history? Because in some way he was.
In some ways he was, yes. This was fresh after Punk had left, right?
Yeah. That was kind of a diva move, Punk.
Yeah,
but
it was always stupid shit that AJ had to deal with those chants because it's like for the love of God, respect her on her own career.
Also, of everybody in the WWE, Punk did release the most slapping dance floor anthems. In the way that a diva would.
Ah, yes, I got you there.
Paw Patrol.
This is a comedy podcast.
Celine, CM stands for Celine Mariah.
Sure.
Punk. As Doc pointed out, AJ says that she is the Divas division, and then Paige's music plays.
Yeah.
Paige was the NXT Women's Champion at the time.
The first NXT Women's
She
Champion.
didn't come
right.
out with the belt, which was stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was never defeated because this was her debut on the main roster, and she never went back. They eventually took the title away from her, and Charlotte won a tournament to get it.
She was back. They had the segment with her walking around the back of NXT with both belts, and like
That's right.
They came up to her and like, you can't actually be NXT Women's Champion if you're the Divas Champion.
Because in this match, she beats AJ Lee for the Divas title.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. It's not that much of a match, but
Well, that's my main frustration is that this match is 100 seconds.
Yeah.
Really, really feels like because that 100 seconds, fucking wall-to-wall awesome wrestling going on in that.
Fire.
It's fucking awesome.
the finish was a little botchy. Paige reverses the Black Widow into her Paige Turner, and the timing was a little bit off.
The timing was a little
But AJ still took the big bump on her head, and the crowd was fine with it.
This match is there is a precursor to this match that involves the most fraught nose boop I have ever seen.
That was
When
great.
AJ calls Paige the sweetest little crumpet,
Yes.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
boops her.
You know what drove me the most crazy out of anything in this match is right as they're about to start the match, AJ's like, we're gonna fight, and Paige is like, oh, but I'm not ready. I'm like, well, you came out to your queued up music in full gear. You sure look ready.
I didn't really get that story there. Paige comes out just to congratulate AJ. Like, come on, I don't buy that shit.
Full gear to her theme, and then says she's not ready for a match because it looks like you came out looking for a fight.
Like, have you watched Raw? You know?
The way I wanted to interpret that was like Paige was kind of bluffing because she wanted to coax AJ into putting the title on the line.
Maybe.
It's a charitable interpretation, but
I imagine all British wrestling families and even just any British wrestling gym, institution, promotion, I imagine all of them to start off as Dickensian, like, orphan collectives, where all of the wrestlers are first taught to pickpocket and then, like, slowly grow up in a brutal hierarchy. Like, I don't know.
That's not too far.
Something about Paige is very specifically, like, Dickensian to me.
like Oliver Twist kind of.
Yes, absolutely.
It's funny you say that because Paige's mother is an incredible wrestler.
I thought you were about to say Paige's mother is an incredible pickpocket.
Paige's second generation. Her mom, Soraya, is
Yeah,
incredible.
we saw Soraya wrestle cheerleader Melissa in a cage at Shimmer. Were you there for that, Doc?
I was not there for that.
That
no.
was WrestleMania weekend.
That sounds great.
One year. Yeah, it was good. I mean, by then, Soraya was already pretty well into her career, and I think she probably had a little bit more mobility before that. But it was still a great match.
I will say to your point, though, Evan, about how most of these British wrestlers have to come up like that. You know, they've held several tournaments with themes in them. The WWE has over the last like 5 or 6 years. And, you know, they bring in like the Cruiserweight Classic where they bring in the best lightweight wrestlers from around the world, and they all have their stories of various times in wrestling and like everything. They had the 2 Mae Young Classics where all the women's wrestlers, you know, unsung heroes through rookies have their stories. They had the UK tournament to introduce their new UK division. It was like 16 guys, and seemingly all of them had exactly the same story, which was, well, I don't know, by the time I was 12, I was just on the street as a ruffian, and, you know, it's like, okay, so you're all like hard Scrabble, I guess I'll fight, you know. It's a good character.
There's the Liverpool guys,
Right.
and then there's the Birmingham guys, and they're very much like the Liverpool #1 guy, Zach Gibson.
Right.
He's the Beatles, and Pete Dunne is fucking Black Sabbath.
Right.
And that's how it is.
I just want to say I really respect Doc. I saw you think for 1 second, am I going to do an accent? And then you're like, no,
No.
I'm not. And I respect that.
Thank you.
And I would imagine that what's sad is that a lot of the British wrestlers must die early from black lung from being chimney sweeps.
Yes.
Yes, all the time.
Those dirty, dirty British chimneys.
So I thought it. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say Paige. In this match, this is her debut on the main roster. But she started wrestling when she was 14.
Paige is 21 in this match.
Yeah,
Wow.
For the
Yeah.
previous, she had been in developmental since she was 18, and the word in the wrestling newsletters and so on was everybody knew that she was ready for the main roster skill wise well before they debuted her, but they had problems in the past debuting 19 or 20-year-olds, putting them on the road and everything. So they were like, we're at least gonna wait until she's 21. Not to mention, as a youth amongst her family, she always had a reputation for being like a real hellraiser. She has several brothers who apparently always had to drag her out of the clubs before she either went off with some guy or murdered some guy. And because she would do either. And so
not literally murder them, but got into fights.
I said what I said.
All right.
And no, she was a fighter, and she still is a fighter.
And some of this sordid past, unfortunately, was revealed to the world at large.
Yeah. And so she.
What are you
they
saying?
waited.
Unfortunately, smiling there, Ben. You watched it.
Wow.
So they waited
Was
for
there
her
like
to
a
be.
sex tape or something?
There was a sex.
Yeah,
tape.
let's not get too into it.
Backstage
Yes.
in
Yeah.
developmental.
Somebody hacked it, and it was a couple of the guys and her, and nobody was punished, and everyone was very embarrassed. And
Yeah. It's not anything worth delving too hard
Yeah, I
into
was
because
being
none
a
of
little
us are
coy
judging
about
her.
it.
But
No,
Not at
of
all.
course not.
Yeah.
That's just the modern world. But yeah, so they waited for her to be 21, and she came out, like a rocket already, a 7-year veteran on TV.
Yeah.
And she basically replaced AJ Lee because this was the end of AJ Lee. AJ retired after this.
I will say the only issue at all that I had with any of this, I'm glad that as women's wrestling in the WWE grows and gets more time, people of varying body types are allowed to wrestle.
Yeah.
Because you get worried watching really skinny people fucking throw themselves at each other.
Yeah.
And both of those, Paige and AJ, both have spinal problems. Paige
Yeah.
had to retire recently at 24?
Yeah, 24,
And
25.
I've had the same. I've had kind of the same thought. Some the Nakamura matches we've watched, where Shinsuke Nakamura is fit, but he seems thinner and slighter
He's
than a lot
wiry,
of the guys
yeah.
for a dude who's 6'2". So when you see really skinny ass people slam up against the turnbuckle, there's part of you that just gets worried about them.
He says he staves off injury by staying flexible by surfing.
I bet that surfing is.
He lives right near
yeah.
Cocoa Beach, and he says on his days off, he gets up early, he goes to Cocoa Beach, he catches a few waves, he stays limber. That's. I mean,
Has anybody here ever surfed? I've never surfed. I've never tried
Never,
to.
no.
Yeah.
I've gone out on a boogie board a little bit, but
Yeah.
I'm afraid of the ocean.
No, the ocean is a terrible place that we should stay out of. Let them do whatever they're doing in there. Don't go in there. Don't take stuff out and eat it.
Giant snaggletooth squids.
Yeah, let them be in there.
One last thing in this match, I thought there was a cool bit of psychology in the finish, where even though it was the Paige Turner coming out of the Black Widow was a little botchy, when AJ has Paige in the Black Widow, she's very careful not to completely wrap her leg around Paige's leg, such that she can't fully lock the hold in, which is what allows Paige to reverse it into the Paige Turner for the finish. Really nice little subtle detail there by AJ Lee.
just the mechanics of it. All right, there's not much
yeah.
to say about the match itself.
Yeah,
It was the segment, it was the character, it was AJ passing it directly to Paige, and that's all great. Tamina there doing the thing that she's best at, which is standing there looking kind of angry.
Yo, I'm pretty sure Tamina only still has a job because she knows
Oh, she knows something.
what her dad did,
Yeah.
and they're keeping her quiet by giving her this job because it's pretty clear that Jimmy Snuka murdered this girl.
yeah.
Jimmy
we've
Snuka
said
is
that
a
before.
straight up murderer. I don't think he did it on purpose. I think he was in a coke rage or something, but he killed her.
No, he was only trying to beat his girlfriend.
And more importantly for now, because Jimmy Snuka is dead, Vince probably covered it up.
Wow. Well, the same way that we learned recently that Hogan covered up for one of his kids when they Stone Cold Broderick'd somebody.
Right, yeah.
He never was able to cover it up too hard. He wasn't able to cover up the crime as a whole.
Yeah.
No,
He was just able to keep Nick out of prison.
It's a dark business.
It is.
really
It is. In case anybody listening isn't familiar with the term, to Broderick somebody is when you kill someone in a DUI.
You know who could solve all these crimes? The Paw Patrol.
They could, but only because they abuse the surveillance state.
Well, they chase cars, right?
One other I will point out, you mentioned that Paige was replacing AJ here.
Yeah.
AJ did stick around another year.
She did.
After this. Remember, her and Paige wrestled
Right,
the
her
Bellas
and
at the
Paige
next
wrestled the Bellas.
WrestleMania. So I think
My
there might have
mistake.
been. I think there might have been more matches between AJ and Paige after this.
Yep.
I don't really remember them.
You must have pushed it out because it was a Bella's match. Congratulations to them both.
Oh, yes.
I will say for
I was going to save that for the minisode, but yeah.
I will say for every AJ match we've watched, except for the one against the Bellas, I wish it was longer. I wish that she got to do more cool shit. It's so obvious when she wrestles what she's capable of, what she could have done if they hadn't tried to force her into a box. But like we said on the main feed episode, I'm fucking really happy that she broke out of that mold as much as she could.
Yeah, I hope maybe she makes a comeback in another 3, 4, 5 years, something like that.
It's 100% up to her. We all know she could. If she wanted to be on Raw this week, it'd be one phone call.
I'd like to see her wrestle Sasha Banks.
Yeah,
That would be cool.
Oh, I want to see her take on Charlotte.
Yeah.
Charlotte,
Yeah.
yeah,
I want to
that'd be
see
a
her
good
wrestle
match too.
the entire women's division, all 3 of the women's divisions. She's, it's much more conducive to a woman of her skill set right now.
I bet she and Becky could have a good promo war.
And
she's as well as a great match.
She's largely, she's one of the biggest people responsible for moving women's wrestling from point A to point B, even though we can't point to a million of her own classics.
She proved a woman could be the most over person on the roster.
Yeah, when she was doing angles with the men and barely wrestling, she became the most over character on the roster. They had to center her because it was stupid not to.
They put her with Dolph Ziggler to help make his
Dolph
star
Ziggler.
rise.
I mean, we already knew that a woman could be the most over person on the roster, heel or face, from Vicky Guerrero.
Yeah.
Being the most over heel on the roster for a solid couple years there.
So the two of them kind of feuding, which led into that
Yeah.
WrestleMania 30 match, was fantastic
Yeah.
television.
But Vicky couldn't wrestle was the difference.
No, she was purely a character. An amazing one.
Alrighty. This has been Contesting Wrestling Premium. We appreciate you so much, premium listeners.
Thank you.
We hope that you enjoy this.
Send us money.
they're already giving us money.
These are the people
They're
who
the
are already
ones that
giving
Send us more money.
Tell your friends to send us money.
That's really what it is. And if you have comments, thoughts, corrections, you want to yell at us, I guess, if that's your prerogative.
You want to yell specifically at Evan?
And I was going to say, message us on
we have
Twitter.
a special tier for that. We'll give you his phone number.
Yeah. Well,
not his main
can-
phone
the
number.
doxing tier.
He's gonna have to open up a separate Google Google voice line for yelling.
But yeah, at Contesting W on Twitter. And then if you hate me specifically, I'm at Evan Burke, etc. But that's fine. We don't need to get into that. And remember, stay out of the ocean.